Xtalks connects professionals in the life science, medical device, and food industries with useful content like webinars, job openings, articles, and virtual meetings to help you succeed in your career. This food industry-focused podcast brings together some of our editorial staff to share insights into the latest B2B industry news to help keep you up to date. This week on the show, we're discussing Postum, a time-honored coffee alternative, and worst food safety scandals of 2023. Enjoy the show.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Xtalks Food Podcast. I'm Sydney Perlmutter, Senior Food Industry Journalist and Webinar Moderator at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm joined by Aish Rashid and Vera Kovacevic. Thanks for coming today. So I'm going to start us off with a story about foods that are banned in the US. So we've talked about American foods that are banned in other countries, and we've talked about foods that are banned in Europe, but today we're going to focus on foods that are banned in the US. Now, this falls under the regulation typically of two agencies. So the US Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or the USDA. And these agencies, of course, play a critical role in ensuring the safety and quality of the food supply. How well they do that is up to individual interpretation. But the FDA, which was established over 100 years ago in 1906, is responsible for the regulation and supervision of food safety, tobacco products, dietary supplements, prescription and over-the-counter pharmaceutical drugs, vaccines, biopharmaceuticals, medical devices, and veterinary products. So there's a lot that falls under their jurisdiction, and food is, of course, one of them. The USDA, on the other hand, oversees the safety of meat, poultry, and egg products, among other responsibilities. So their combined efforts are crucial in determining which foods are banned in the US for safety and health reasons. So let's start with number one. And this is one that we've talked about on the show before, and that is unpasteurized milk, which is also known as raw milk. And it's a significant health risk due to its potential to harbor dangerous bacteria. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, stated that raw dairy products are 840 times more likely to cause foodborne illnesses compared to pasteurized dairy products. So consequently, its sale is banned in 21 states with strict limitations in others. Second on the list is shark fins. In the US, the consumption of shark fins, primarily used in soups and considered a delicacy in China, is surrounded by controversy. The main concern is the practice of finning, which is a process where fins are removed from sharks, which are then returned to the ocean, often still alive but unable to survive. And this inhumane practice has led to shark fins becoming one of several banned foods in the U.S. since the Senate passed the James M. Inhofe National Defense Authorization Act in December 2022, so relatively recently. Third, I believe we've also talked about this, is Kinder Surprise chocolate eggs. So although Kinder chocolate is popular in Europe, the Kinder Surprise eggs have faced legal hurdles in the US, and they're banned because they contain non-edible items, posing a risk particularly to children. Under the provisions of the 1938 Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, Kinder Surprise eggs are classified as adulterated food, rendering their importation and sale illegal. In response, a modified version called Kinder Joy has been introduced, which does adhere to FDA regulations. Back to animals, fourth on the list is sea turtles, and they're on the endangered species list, but they're currently legally hunted in 42 countries and territories around the world, but not the US. And historically used in dishes like turtle soup, the endangered status of sea turtles has contributed to a decline in the popularity of such culinary practices. And under the Endangered Species Act, it's illegal to import them into the US, whether as food or for any other purposes. Fifth on the list is sassafras oil. Formerly used in root beer, this oil was banned by the FDA a very long time ago in 1960 due to its main constituent, safrole, being a potential carcinogen. Safrole is also a precursor in the synthesis of some psychoactive drugs. And it's important to note that this ban does not extend to substances where sassafras oil occurs naturally, such as cinnamon and basil. Sixth on the list is pufferfish, and it's a delicacy in Japan's fine dining scene, but it can be lethal if improperly prepared. Since 1980, pufferfish has been on the FDA's automatic detention list. The agency noted that it contains tetrodotoxin and sadotoxin, toxins that are affecting the central nervous system and known to be more deadly than cyanide. Consequently, this dish is seldom served in the US. Next on the list is kind of a fun one. It's Four Loko, and this was a drink that debuted in 2005 and quickly became notorious for its combination of alcohol and caffeine, earning the nickname Blackout in a Can on college campuses. Linked to hospitalizations of young people, it faced state-level bans, starting with Massachusetts in 2010. The FDA also challenged the sale of caffeinated alcohol beverages, and in 2014, Four Loko voluntarily removed caffeine from its formula, and the modified non-caffeinated version remains available nationwide, but that original Four Loko is now banned. Eighth on the list is beluga caviar. It's known for its luxury, but it was banned in the US in 2005 due to its popularity leading to overfishing of beluga sturgeon. This excessive demand for the delicacy pushed the species into a protected status, making the sale of their caviar illegal. Sturgeon Aqua Farms, which is a major caviar producer and the sole legal breeder of beluga sturgeon in America, works under a unique agreement with the government. So it donates fertilized beluga eggs to aid in replenishing the species in the wild. Ninth on the list, something I had never heard of before, is ackee. So this is native to South Africa and popular in numerous Caribbean nations. Ackee fruit contains hypoglycin A, a toxin deemed dangerous by the FDA when consumed in large amounts. Consequently, this fruit isn't available fresh in supermarkets, but it can be purchased either canned or processed from manufacturers that are included on the FDA's green list of approved growers. Last one is haggis. So since 1971, Scotland's national dish, haggis, has been on the list of foods banned in the US. Made from sheep's heart, liver, and lungs, combined with spices and oatmeal, and traditionally encased in a sheep's stomach or an artificial substitute, haggis was prohibited following a USDA ruling that livestock lungs should not be saved for use as human food. Despite this, the Scottish government remains optimistic that the ban might eventually be lifted, allowing Americans to legally enjoy this Scottish delicacy. So with this list, obviously this is only 10. There are certainly more, but I tried to sort of have half of them be animal related and then the other half be either produce or, other things aside from animals. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this list specifically because I found that, when we were looking at foods that were banned in Europe, it was a lot of, synthetic preservatives and chemicals and things like that. But this list sort of focuses more on, ethical things rather than food safety and studies that have been done. I'm very curious to get your opinion on this list versus, the foods banned in Europe list.
Hey, Sydney. Well, I think, can you remind us what were some of the items on the foods banned in Europe list?
Yes, absolutely. So I spoke about 5. One was titanium dioxide, which is a chemical for whitening. Another one was a chemical that served as like a bleaching agent and a fortifying agent. Another one was propylparaben, which is a antimicrobial preservative. Another one was bovine, like a hormone from bovine, or it was a human-made variant of that. And then the last one was brominated vegetable oil.
Okay, so yeah, I think the foods on the American list are much more like ethically, there's a lot more ethical considerations on the foods banned in in America list, especially like things like shark fins and sea turtles and the caviar. Yeah, so I would say most of, if not all, the seafood related items on like the list in the States are for ethical reasons, strongly for ethical reasons, which is nice to see. But Sydney, were there any on this list of top 10 foods banned in the US that you found kind of strange or interesting?
Yeah, well, the strange one, or the one that seems like it's, not like the others, was the Kinder Surprise eggs, which I understand why they're banned, because of, they typically would come with toys inside, and children would, it was a choking hazard. You could either, I guess, use that as, I guess the FDA decided to use that as, a lesson in food safety. But this one, the food itself is not a harm. It's just that it contains something inside it. So that's the one that kind of is, I guess, more funny to me than the other ones. And then I think the Japanese pufferfish and ackee are interesting as well, because if they're not prepared properly, or if you consume ackee raw, or if you don't cook pufferfish properly, then they can be poisonous. I wouldn't want to take that risk anywhere in the world. So it's, those ones are interesting as well to me. Aisha, were there any that stood out to you?
Yeah, so that was my first thought as well, when you were going through the list, that all of these are more ethically centered, rather than the Europe list that we heard about from you, which had more synthetic chemicals and things like that, which a lot of them are not banned in the US at all. I know some states are making moves to ban things like red dye and things like that, but I found that to be very interesting. So that was the first thought that I had as well. But I am looking up a couple of the US banned foods here, and they are indeed banned in Europe as well. So there is some overlap. For example, shark fins overlap the other way in terms of shark fins being banned both in the US and in Europe as well. So I'm pretty sure, do you have, this might be kind of a tough question, but do you have any idea of how many foods in general? Are there like hundreds of foods, I'm guessing, that are banned in the US and similarly in the EU, I guess? But I assume there are a lot, and so there is probably a lot of overlap, but interesting that it's probably only the ones that involve like endangered species, and rightfully so, for sure. But when it comes to like, let's say, synthetic compounds that might be carcinogenic or things like that, the U.S. is lagging behind in a lot of those areas, and just because I think they have such a powerful food industry and all of the lobbyists that are behind various food sectors, and so it's a lot more complicated. I think the politics of food, I feel, are a lot more complicated in the U.S. compared to perhaps the EU, or maybe the EU is just has more of an ethical hat on. But yeah, I hope to see things like, I'm trying to see if sassafras oil, for example, is banned. Oh, that is banned probably in the EU. But yeah, that was, again, my first thought. And yeah, a lot of delicacies, actually, which it's interesting, a lot of delicacies in certain cultures, like haggis. I had never heard about that being Scotland's national dish. Something like that being banned, and caviar. So a lot of these are like, or Japanese pufferfish, like these are either delicacies or like national foods in some countries. And so that's interesting that people obviously are fine eating them in those countries. I think the concern with haggis is probably some kind of like to do with like pathogens and things like that associated with sheep and livestock. Lungs shouldn't be saved for use, as you mentioned here. So it's a combination of ethical concerns around, it seems, protecting animal welfare, and then also some to do with like food safety. So the reasons behind the different bans also differ, and it's very interesting. Some are culturally relevant, which makes it also kind of tricky to deal with as well. So a lot of different factors, which I found to be interesting.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, actually, how it's the culture between the food culture between the US and Europe, for example, differs. I know some countries have like a very strong food heritage and they want to preserve that. And, haggis being the Scottish national dish, it would never be banned there. But because it's not embedded within the culture in North America and the US, it can be banned for other reasons. So, I feel like you kind of selectively will choose what's banned, based on the culture, based on the safety, but it's all a choice at the end of the day. Whether or not it's actually safe to consume, you kind of have to do individual research for yourself and decide for yourself, because I personally would probably not want to eat any of these foods, but that's just because of my thoughts and where and how I grew up.
Yeah, it's food is culture, right? So it's huge in terms of like what we're accustomed to eating and what's kind of normalized for us versus not. What I also found interesting was ackee. I've been hearing about this a lot for the past couple of years, and I wonder if it's like similar to like durian. And I know that's like another very interesting fruit consumed in Southeast Asia. So and ackee, I didn't know that like the FDA had moved to, well, not the FDA, but like that it's banned because there's a toxin in it. But then you wonder, like, there are people, like numerous people around the world eating it. So it's, it's a very culturally relevant food for in a lot of countries. But then again, you'd have to do studies really to take a look at rates of whatever this might be associated with. Maybe it's a cancer, because I think it's deemed to be carcinogenic, maybe just a toxin deemed to be dangerous. Okay. It's interesting. I know, like, even around sushi and raw fish, like, there's a lot of debate whether it's okay to eat during certain, like, let's say during pregnancy, but some schools of thought are like, no, it's okay to eat during pregnancy. So I think the research is lacking, and therefore people are just like kind of doing their own thing with a lot of these foods for now. But hopefully we get more clarity on what exactly the health risks are with these foods, and of course the other angle being protecting wildlife species that are endangered. So cool list.
Thank you. Yes, a lot of nuance. All right, moving on to our next story. So since its debut in 1937, Kraft mac and cheese has become a beloved fixture in American homes. This is kind of the antithesis of banned foods. Known for its easy-to-prepare blue box meals, Kraft mac and cheese sells over 1 million boxes daily. This culinary icon is so ingrained in North American culture that it's even dubbed Canada's official dish, which is kind of surprising. So haggis in Scotland, Kraft mac and cheese in Canada.
Oh no, don't say it. Don't say that. I can't believe that.
Now, though,
it's maple syrup, guys.
Yes, maple syrup, poutine, all of that. But now, in an era where dairy alternatives are soaring in popularity, Kraft mac and cheese is getting a plant-based makeover. As a collaboration effort between the Kraft Heinz Not Co. and the Not Company Inc. initiated in 2022, the launch of Kraft Not Mac and Cheese marks a strategic move to tap into the expanding market of healthier macaroni and cheese products. The initial offering includes 2 varieties, Kraft Not Mac and Cheese Original and White Cheddar. This plant-based iteration, which is a first in the US, leverages NotCo's AI-driven technology, and this tech, named Giuseppe, crafts plant-based substitutes indistinguishable from their animal-based counterparts. Now, the CEO of Kraft Heinz NotCo, Lucho Lopez May, emphasized the company's commitment to creating plant-based versions of favorite foods without compromising on taste or familiarity. So what is Kraft Not Mac and Cheese? Well, it's a fresh take on the classic blue box, responding to the booming demand for plant-based options. Kraft mentioned in a press release that currently less than 30% of customers make repeated purchases of of plant-based mac and cheese alternatives, mainly due to issues with taste and texture. Nevertheless, Kraft Heinz Not Co. is confident that its new Kraft Not mac and cheese, which is free from artificial dyes and made with fava bean protein and coconut oil powder, will not only preserve but enhance the brand's legacy with its creamy, dairy-free alternative. As consumer preferences evolve, Kraft Heinz stays ahead by continuously innovating. The company recognized a long-standing consumer demand for a plant-based version of its mac and cheese in the U.S. Hence, the new Kraft Not mac and cheese is set to hit stores nationwide, completing its rollout by early next year. But the 85-year-old brand is not without competition. Newer companies like Goodles, which is a startup supported by actress Gal Gadot, offer boxed pasta that boasts higher protein and fiber content, but at a premium price. Goodles also includes a plant-based mac and cheese in its product range, and other brands like Banza, Dea, and Annie's are also offering comparable products. But Notco's partnership extends beyond mac and cheese with Kraft. They've also transformed other iconic Kraft products. Before venturing into mac and cheese, Kraft Heinz released Kraft Not Cheese Slices and Not Mayo, expanding its plant-based portfolio. And this joint venture signifies Kraft Heinz's commitment to sustainable, ethical, and plant-based food options. And in addition to this venture, Kraft Heinz is growing its plant-based offerings nationwide. In Australia, vegan Kraft mac and cheese has been available for many years, and a plant-based Philadelphia cream cheese recently launched in the US as well. Kraft is running a contest actually until December 15th, inviting fans to suggest new mac and cheese flavors, possibly paving the way for more vegan options like Kraft Not mac and cheese. The Kraft Heinz Not Co. Mission is clear: make plant-based eating irresistible, accessible, and enjoyable. And with plans to expand globally in 2024, this collaboration could significantly impact the plant-based food industry. So this story just reminded me of various stories we've talked about in the past of other sort of iconic products getting a plant-based makeover, like Reese's, peanut butter cups, Kit Kats, I believed. And, those all made sense to me. Those were all chocolate. I wasn't really struggling to understand like what they were going to be made of and what the ingredients were going to be. This one, different story. I was really, I also didn't really put two and two together that Kraft mac and cheese, the normal one, like had cheese in it. But it does, obviously, because they had to reformulate it without dairy. What do you guys think this will actually, we won't know what it tastes like, but do you think that this will be successful among, the plant-based eaters? Because I personally don't think that non-plant-based eaters would flock to this. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I actually think plant-based eaters will flock to this because it's such an iconic food, and maybe a lot of plant-based eaters may have like ditched it on their journey to, veganism and whatnot. So I think this is a good and very smart move given the growing plant-based sector. So I think on the part of Kraft and Kraft Heinz, the company, and I think this was probably just like a matter of time for them to come out with something like this, or like a plant-based alternative to their iconic mac and cheese. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest from plant-based consumers, and maybe even non-plant-based consumers. I don't see them, switching over from the real thing, I guess, the traditional mac and cheese, but just to maybe try it out as another option. And yeah, we all know that it's such a comfort food for many people, but at the same time, there's a lot of skepticism in terms of okay, this is really cheese, or is it it's fake? It's probably not good for you. So maybe just from the better for you perspective, maybe people might want to try it from that angle as well, in terms of having an option that's plant-based and maybe has less worrisome ingredients like dried, milk products or cheese products and things like that. So yeah, I think this is really cool. And yeah, I'm not a fan of mac and cheese, but Yeah, I shouldn't say that, but anyway, I'd still try it though.
Yeah, I love mac and cheese, but I'm not sure that I really like the name of this plant-based version of it. Like they basically call everything not cheese slices, not mayo, not mac and cheese. True. It's like, I get it, you don't want to just put the label plant-based in front of your original name, but I'm not really sure I'm liking this not thing, especially because on the packaging they wrote not cheese.
It still says mac and cheese, right? And then not cheese. That's so confusing.
And then they just have a little plant-based at the top left corner of the box. I mean, it is kind of confusing.
Oh, I didn't even notice
exactly.
That,
I don't even think people would notice that. They would probably be like, what is this then? If it's not cheese, what is it?
Right. I had the same thought when I opened up this story, actually. That's a great point, Vera, that it's like mac and cheese, but not cheese. Then what? How is it mac and cheese still? So, it's a bit of the marketing here is a bit confusing. And I agree. I don't like the not and the no and all of that with this either.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's based on NotCo's just their name. They're like,
even what's up with that NotCo?
Well, that company is a plant-based dairy company, so everything that they do is not. Yes. So this sounds so philosophical, but their flagship product is called Not Milk. So everything under their umbrella is not blank. So that's where the name comes from, but I completely agree. I think it's like a bit of like a mouthful. It's a bit like confusing if you're not familiar with the company, which most people wouldn't be. I think they could have probably done a better job branding it. I think you really need to emphasize either the word vegan or the word plant-based, because that is something that we all understand and that we are, there's no confusion there. But just saying not is not cheese, or, it's like, well, that could be anything then. If it's not cheese, then what is it?
Yeah, just putting a little leaf, maybe like a plant, like a leaf on the box might have helped even. But even then, it's interesting because I think for a lot of these plant-based products, you have to kind of actually pick up the box and dig deep into what the ingredients are, right? It's never like a no-brainer, like plant-based. Okay, it could be soy-based, it could be fava bean, it could be, a whole host of different things. So I think I don't think plant-based hasn't gone too mainstream in terms of that, in terms of the ingredients that are used in plant-based products. It's never this is apart from soy. I know that soy did go pretty, there was no problem in putting, this is soy-based right on the box. But I think for a lot of products, it's still kind of you got to actually look and dig deep into what this plant-based, not cheese or not whatever alternative is.
Yeah, it brings up a whole other discussion of whether, vegan food, just because it is vegan, it's healthier. I think we know that that's not always the case, and probably isn't the case for this, just because the original is not, known to be all that healthy. But it is, of course, a very iconic comfort food, and I love the idea. I'm glad that I like to see the accessibility for people who went plant-based, and now they can enjoy a form or comfort of theirs. So I like it from that perspective a lot, and I guess we'll see how it does in terms of sales when it is rolled out in the US. All right, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Food Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Xtalks Food Industry Podcast.
Bye.
If you enjoyed our discussions today, please share the episode with your friends and colleagues, and be sure to subscribe in order to be notified when a new episode is released. To join in on the discussion, you can find Xtalks on social media. Email podcast@xtalks.com or comment on the articles directly. Links are in the show description. Take a moment to join our community at xtalks.com to get access to everything we have to offer, including webinars, job listings, virtual meetings, articles, and more. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast are those of the speakers sharing them. They should not be taken as professional advice and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.